All right, I hope you were here today to talk about bronies. This is the brony panel. This is the Space Dandy panel, and so hopefully you're here for that, and if you're not, you can't be. Sorry. This is a kind of a unique time for Anime Fest to be able to bring 5 people from the same show over at the same time. And I just want to start this off first by asking, how many of you have heard of Space Dandy? Okay. How many of you have watched Space Dandy? All right. How many of you have watched the Japanese version of Space Dandy? And how many of you have been watching the English version? Now, how many of you have been watching both? There's the hardcore fans right there. All right, so today we have with us 5 creators that have been involved in the Space Dandy project, and this is by no means the full staff. However, I think we've been able to provide a very good representation of the creative process, and I think I would like to turn it over to each of these guests here for a brief introduction of who they are and what function they have been participating in the program. So let's go ahead and first let's give them all a big welcome for joining. All right, so first I'd like to start us off with the gentleman in the middle here, in the gray. If we can please hear.
スペースダンディで監督をやってる夏目慎吾です。よろしくお願いします。
I'm Mr. Natsume, director of Space Dandy.
And next.
スペースダンディで脚本を書いてます上野紀美子です。よろしくお願いします。
And I'm Akimiku Ueno, screenwriter for Space Dandy.
同じくスペースダンディで脚本をやってます佐藤大と申します。
And I'm Dai Sato, also a screenwriter on the Space Dandy project. And the other side.
スペースダンディで作画監督をやったり、キーアニメーターとして参加したりしている青山博之です。よろしくお願いします。
青山博之さんですね。キーアニメーションとアートディレクター。
Japanese movie. We have to switch to English movie.
He's an animation director. His name is Hiroyuki Aoyama, and he's both an animator and an animation director on Space Dandy.
スペースダンディでストーリーボードと作画監督をやりました清水宏です。よろしくお願いします。
English, please. Yeah, he's a key animator. My name is Hiroshi Shimizu. I'm a key animator on Space Dandy. All right, so I know. When did people first hear about Space Dandy? Maybe 1 year ago? It started airing in January? January? Did you hear about it before then? Or was it new? Okay, so who is the general director of Space Dandy? Shinichiro Watanabe. So I would like to ask each of these creative staff here how Mr. Watanabe asked them to join the Space Dandy project. I think that would be pretty interesting to find out. So let's start first with the director. and find out how were you asked to join the Space Dandy project? Brandon, can you say?
そうまあ成り行きっていうかなんていうんですかねそんなに深く考えずに入った感じはするんですよねどう答えればいいですか
So I think it's pretty much forced into it, is that right?
そうですね渡辺さんのことを
そう仕事では初めてで今回初めてやることになったんですけどまあプロデューサーの南さんから声をかけられた
Okay, so producer Minami basically called upon him to be director for this particular series.
南さんはちょうどそのカーボーイビバップのプロデューサーを南さんですね
And so he had a history through Cowboy Bebop as being a producer, so that would be a good choice.
で自分が入った時はもうビバップメインスタッフだけのことにしてるんですねもともともう土台がですねビバップのスタッフで新しいアニメを作るそれに自分が
So he was tasked with taking some of the same people that worked on Cowboy Bebop and creating something new, I think, which was refreshing for everybody.
自分もビバップを見て育った世代がちょっと感覚して
So as a kid, I was a big watcher of Bebop myself, and I was really impressed with the work. So when I was asked to lead the project, the key members of the Bebop creation team already on board, it was a little intimidating.
Yeah. そうですね。僕の場合は夏目さんとはちょっと違ってて、もともと渡辺監督とカーボーイビバップで仕事をしたのがデビューだったので、渡辺監督が、新しいものを久しぶりに、まあ、ビバップ以来その南さんとホームズでやるというので、一番頭から参加させてもらいました。
So in my case, it was a little bit different than Mr. Nelson but you know, I was involved in the Cowboy Bebop project originally with Watanabe Shishiro, and so he contacted me. And this is actually the first project I've participated on with both him and Minami, producer Minami as well since then. So I've kind of been part of this project since the very, very inception.
最初は企画書を考えて、まあこの中に14話見た人っています。
Hey, so you know, I've been involved also with kind of the whole planning element of this. But has anybody in here seen episode 14 yet, which is the first episode of season 2?
見ました。中にトラックに乗ってたスペースダンディがいたの分かります？
Did you notice that there was a trucker space dandy?
最初の企画あっちだったんですよね。
So the original idea for the story was really to make Dandy the trucker.
そうで途中からなんかトラッカーで物運ぶだけだとネタが尽きるって言って宇宙人ハンターに変わってハンターになってよかったなって今思ってますよね。
And so we were thinking that, you know, if we made the main character a trucker who just basically carried packages around, we'd probably run out of stories, run out of material to write. So I'm really glad we changed him to being a space alien hunter.
Yes. Yeah,
A lot more stories to write.
でそこで変わってストーリーが大枠で出来上がったところで夏目さんが入ってもらってでそこから、上野さんが入っていただいてっていう感じでストーリーを作っていくようになった順番でした。
And so, you know, it kind of started out that way with us creating kind of the general theme, the general outline of the story. And then director Natsume was brought on board. And then following that was writer Ueno Kimiko.
あと私たちのね先輩にあたる信本恵子というカウボーイビバップのオリジナルの、シリーズ構成をやった彼女も今回は頭から参加していて。
Additionally, Nobumoto Keiko, who was the key writer and the series composition for Cowboy Bebop had also joined this project from the very, very onset. So we had a very strong team of writers from the very beginning.
そんな感じで、キミコさん。
And so I think I'm going to pass it over to Kimiko right now.
このプロジェクトに出会ったり。
7、8年ぐらい前に、お蔵入りになったコメディ映画のシナリオを書いて、それをたまたま渡辺さんが読んで、それを覚えててもらって、ある日突然メールが来ました。
So about 7 or 8 years ago, I wrote a script for an animation, and unfortunately, it kind of got stuck in the back shelves of some unforgotten room, and it never materialized. But I had shown that script again 7 or 8 years ago to director Watanabe, and he read that script. And about 7 or 8 years later, I get an email from him.
その脚本書いたことも忘れたみたいで。 で突然メールが来たんですけど、SF の、コメディアニメをやらないかとメールが来て、速攻でやりますってしました。
And so, you know, it was a comedy that I had written, and all of a sudden I got this out of the blue offer from Watanabe saying, hey, there's this crazy sci-fi comedy that I want to do. Are you interested? What do you think I said? Yeah. Absolutely. Right away. When do we start?
渡辺さんからクレイジー頭のおかしい
そうそう。
で紹介されたのが
And so, you know, Mr. Watanabe actually introduced this Ms. Ueno to us as this really kind of crazy, off-the-wall, ridiculous writer person. So it was kind of, I didn't know what to expect when I met her.
ゾンビの数とかレースの数は増えました
So for those of you that have seen the zombie episode, that's the race episode. We were saying.
あと14話。
ラジオ
And also number 14, the season.
いや本当に頭のおかしい間だったなっていう。
She is a little bit different than the normal person.
We're having fun here.
じゃあ僕の場合は、スペースダンディの制作デスクに長野さんという女性の人がいるんですが、その人と僕の彼女が友達でして、僕の彼女がやったんですが、長野さんの仕事を手伝っていて、それで参加することになりました。
Actually, the girl that told him to help Mrs. Nagano, which was working for this animation, so he was kind of
Miss Nagano is part of Bones, so she was kind of involved with the studio side. His girlfriend is friends with Nagano. And, said, hey, I got this friend, needs help, so you're joining.
.僕の山中慎一郎さんとの最初のきっかけは、5、6年前に「日こと発人」というタイトルのアニメーションがあったんですけど、その時に僕はキャラクターデザインに参加してまして、渡辺慎一郎さんがミュージックディレクターなのかな。で、渡辺慎一郎さんが次に企画をするときに一緒にやりませんかというふうに誘われたのが最初だったんですけど、それはスペースダンディーではなかったんですが、それから数年後、3年前に2パー3世の峰不二子という女の子という作品の時にまた渡辺慎一郎さんに会いまして、スペースダンディーが始まりますということになりまして、一緒にやりませんかと声をかけられたのが最初でした。
Well, when he was working with Michiko and Hachi, then he met
the banda girl.
A woman named Mine Fujiko. Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was sorry. I should have cut it in the middle. And at the party of that the band of Mine Fujiko, and he got the offer from the business to work with both. That's how it is.
So you might remember 2 years ago, if you were here, we had director Yamamoto, who was the director on that TV series. And a lot of people don't realize this, but actually Watanabe Shinichiro was the music director on that series as well. And so at their completion party that they had, that's where Shimizu-san, who also worked as an animator on that project, was able to once again bump into Watanabe-san.
彼女はラーメンの会と、あと、あさってオンエアになるロックの会の監督を山本さやさんしてます。そう、山本。
So, episode 2, which was the ramen episode, or the ramen episode, right? So she was the episode director, Yamamoto, who did Lupin. She was the episode director for episode 2, the ramen episode, and also she's the director for the episode that will be shown tomorrow night. And the scriptwriter for episode 2 was Dai. And the scriptwriter for the episode to be shown tomorrow was Ueno Kimiko. So, we don't want to quite open it up to a lot of questions. So I'm going to add, I've thought of a few to ask, but if you hear something, and we're going to have a little bit of time at the end, if you want to ask more detail, then please jump in. But for now, I think I'd like to ask each of these individuals what they thought about any particular episode, if they have any one interesting story, like maybe, I don't know, episode 5, or if they have one particular interesting story maybe about any of their episodes. これからみんなそれぞれに聞くんですけど、自分の関わった回でもいいし、関わらなかった回でもいいんですけど、ちょっとこの輪を書くにあたって、参加することにあたって、ちょっと面白いことにあったりしてたら、ぜひ教えてくださいね。まあ、他の、例えば、じゃあ、ここでたくさん苦労しましたよというのがあれば、ぜひみんなに、教えてください。
どちらかと。
大体さん。
はい。僕は関わった今まで放送になった話数は2と6と13なんですね。
So I've been involved in episodes 2, 6, and 13 myself.
中でも一番思い出深いのは13話です。
And so for me, the one that probably has the most emotion attached to it is episode 13.
まあ、掃除機が恋をする話なんですけど、
It's really a story about a vacuum cleaner that falls in love.
もともと、このダンディの企画が動き始めた時に、ジョナサンのお家に泊まってた時に、もうその企画は動いていて、
So actually, when we were planning for this, I was staying at Jonathan's house after the Anime Fest event. And
で、その時に彼の家の冷蔵庫が壊れまして、
at that time, Jonathan's refrigerator broke down.
で、その場で冷蔵庫買いに行くぞって言われて、アメリカのすごい中古のいっぱいいろんな家電が置いてあるところに行きまして、
And so he said, uh-oh, refrigerator died, let's go buy a new one. So he took me to Lowe's, where we found this entire section of nothing but these huge appliances lined up.
そこをこう彼が物色チョイスしてる間、僕はプラプラその家電屋さんを歩いていて、その時に掃除機がドバーッと並んでるところがあって、 こういう感じのストーリーの作れる場所がうまくストーリーにはまったらいいなと思ったんですね。
So while I was, Jonathan was picking out what brand refrigerator he needed to buy, I decided to take a walk around the store, and I found this aisle at Lowe's that had a bunch of vacuum cleaners just lined up in a huge row. And I thought, wouldn't it be wild to have an anime with a bunch of vacuum cleaners in it?
それで帰りにフータンとツインピークスに行って、こういう感じのストーリーのやつをそのままっていう感じになってたんですよ。
And so on the way back, we stopped by Twin Peaks to grab a bite to eat. Wouldn't this be a cool location or setting for an anime?
そうですね。そうやってなんかテキサスでこうやって歩いてたことが13話の中にはすごい入ってるし、ダンディ自体の話にもそういうエピソードが、だからすごくジョナサン含めてアニメフェスの皆さんには感謝したいですね。
And so, it was probably from my experiences of coming here to Anime Fest in Texas, and being able to see the city and walk around and visit the stores, all of that kind of added up into a lot of the elements that I was able to put into episode 13. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have come here and to share these experiences with everybody here.
そんな感じです。
私は3話と4話と7話と10話と12話と14話と20話と23話。
もう自由に
I can't keep up. She's done with all the different numbers of the episodes she worked on. So 3, 4, 7, 12, 14, 20, 23, 10. Bingo.
7話で、渡辺さんからかっこいい女の子に受けそうなキャラを出してほしいって言われてプリンスを書いて。
And so I was in episode 7, which is a big race story. I was asked by Mr. Watanabe to make a character that would be popular with the ladies. So I came up with Prince.
で初めはそれで書いてたんですけど、なんか話が進むうちにゲイになっちゃったんですね。
And so as we were writing this story, I don't know when it happened, but at some point, instead of being popular with the ladies, Prince became gay. So there's an expression in Japanese that I won't translate, but it has to do with connecting from the rear. So at the very end of episode 7, if you've seen it, it's like a giant Buddha image that appears, right? It's called Miroku Bosatsu.
なんかそれ本当は脚本ではそこは未来に行ったら進化した人類がいたって言って最後にチャック・ノリスが
So the story is supposed to be that way, way, way in the future, humanity has evolved and progressed. And at the very end of all things, instead of seeing the giant Buddha, you see a giant Chuck Norris.
チャックに断られましたね。
And they were not allowed to. Chuck didn't like that idea.
これでシークレット
So don't repeat this. This is part of the secret. You might be in trouble with jumping in. But in actuality, and again, this is still secret, so he'll be back in episode 23. Chuck Norris, that is. A little bit of revenge for not letting us use him.
督という全体を通して見る立場のポジションだったんですよ。で、今回渡辺さんが総監督というポジションですね。で監督としてはその渡辺さんの下についていろいろ現場を見るというポジションをやってました。
So, my role in Space Dandy was director, and Watanabe Shinichiro's role was more of a general director, I think is how it's been translated, but he could be like an executive director. And in my case, what the original intent was for me to pretty much protege Watanabe Shinichiro in the directing element, and kind of learn as I went.
で結構丸投げだったんで結構無理難題をやって帰っていくみたいな感じのスタイルでやってた。ちょっと
And so, in actuality, instead of copying him, I ended up with just a boatload of work dumped on me. Say, make it happen. And it was, I don't know if I can handle all of this, but I did what I could.
で任されても今回結構格は演出とか作家でも演奏する人が監督プラスの人が多いんですよ、ベテランで。
So, one of the extra unique things about this project was that a lot of the animators, a lot of the animation directors, and a lot of the storyboard directors, if you were, a lot of these people are in their own right of a director class, a caliber, superstars, if you were, in the animation world.
誰も言うことを聞いて
So nobody listened to anything I said.
そこが思い出で。
So rather than a single episode, I say probably one of the strongest memories I have is no matter what I said, people wouldn't listen to me.
すごくストレスかもしれない。
A little stressful.
まあ現場はもう終わって全26本全部作り終わって制作が終わった。
So right now we've actually completed, finally finished the production of all 26 episodes. So I'm able to breathe a little easier now. So now I'm kind of juggling again.
僕は、アニメーションディレクターとして参加していたのは2話と17話ですね。ラーメンの回とミュージカルの回です。で、手伝いをする感じで半分ぐらいアニメーションディレクターを手伝ったのは話数ナンバーは覚えてないんですけど、宮部が故郷へ帰る話10話ですね。10話覚えてます。
So I was involved in animation directing for episodes 2, which is the ramen episode, as well as episode 17, which is the musical. And also, I've helped out on a lot of other ones from an animation point of view, but I think number 10, which was Meow Visits His Home World. That's the other one I was participating in.
でやっぱり僕は今まではどちらかというと真面目な作品に関わることが多かったので、例えばスペースダンディのブーギーズとかを書かなきゃいけないのかっていうのが当時衝撃で、何しろダンディに関わる前に携わってた作品は風立ちぬでした。
So, for me, most of my career has been on pretty serious works. So I wouldn't say that comedy was something that I really participated in. So, to be honest with you, I was a little overwhelmed, if you were, by some of the elements of the Space Dandy story. Things like, I don't know, boobies. Especially because the work that I had just finished working on right before joining this was The Wind Rises.
でも2話のラーメンの話数では演出をされた山本小夜さんがブービーズの書き方に関してすごく手ほどきもしてくれたので、すごくディティールとかセクシーなラインはほとんど山本小夜さんの指示で何とか書くことができました。
And so for me, I think probably one of the interesting points of animating episode 2, which was again, the episode director on that was Yamamoto Sayo, is she was very detailed and very helpful with making sure that I got the curves on all the ladies just right.
なので非常に砕けた た作品のことをいろいろ勉強できたので非常に楽しい仕事でした。
So personally for me, it was a great change of pace to go from so many serious works that I've done to really explore comedy and see what it was like to participate in something that's definitely not on the serious side.
僕がスペースダンディで参加した話数は8話と先週放送の19話と、オープニングの原画、あと26話の原画です。
So the episodes from Space Dandy that I participated in were episodes 8, which is The Lonely Pooch Planet, I believe, as well as episode 19 and episode 26.
8話と19話、先週の回は、ストーリーボードと演出と作画監督をやらせてもらったのですが、
So both for 18 and for episode 8 and 19, I did the storyboards and the episode direction.
やはり1話につきストーリーボードから演出で作画監督まで全部やるというのはかなり自分的には仕事量が多くてかなり大変でした。
So for me, thinking back on doing everything on an episode, the storyboarding, the directing, the animating, it's a ton of work. And for me, taking on that much was a huge effort required.
特に8話で、ワンコの話なんですけど、A パートでかなり最後ワンコが死んでかなり悲しい感じで CM に入るんですが、後半 B パートは変わってドタバタ劇ということで、どういうふうにまとめていいかが全く分からず苦労しました。
And so, with that particular episode number 8, I was a little bit challenged when I was having to make part A, the first half, end on kind of a sad note with the dog dying. So it was sad that we went directly to commercial, but then when we come back, the second half is way more out there with the action and the craziness that ensues. So making that transition is definitely a challenge to go in tonality of the word.
その中で、A パートと B パート、全く違う風に考えて、B パートでは自分で原画もかなり描いたので、ドタバタな感じのコメディ風な作画で結構楽しんでやれたのが一番印象に残ってます。
So probably I would say, if I think about when I had to treat them separately, honestly. When I was working on A part, that was almost like one episode, and B part, that was a different episode. But for me, the comedy aspect, right, the excitement in the second half of that, I drew an incredible number of keyframes on this myself. So for me, working with comedy and something that was lively and action-packed, that was kind of the coolest memory I have working on the project.
でもやっぱり先ほど言ったようにちょっとスケジュール的に演出から全部やるっていうのでやっぱり原画がどうしても時間が取れなくて、もっと今思えばもっと楽しんでいっぱいドタバタとギャグをやりたかったなと思うんですがちょっとその辺が残念だなと思って。
But if I had to mention a regret about all of that, it's because I did so much myself. And frankly, it takes a lot of time to draw some keyframes. But with the schedule the way it was, I can look back now and I can think of all these amazing other things I wanted to try and do and put in there. And the fact that I wasn't able to get all of what I wanted to do in there from the very beginning was a little frustrating personally.
他のワンスーとかを見てるとみんな結構のびのびと楽しく描いてる人たちが多かった ので、ちょっとまたこういう機会があったら、またそんな感じで楽しく参加させてもらえたらなと思ってます。
And so if I ever get the opportunity to participate in kind of a project like this in the future, you know, I watched all these great episodes before mine, even where they were just enjoying themselves and their own pace. I definitely think I'm going to take a slightly different approach and make sure that I enjoy myself thoroughly as I make it as well.
そうです。
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left before we need to wrap up this particular panel. And I know that there are probably some of you with some questions, hopefully about Space Dandy. But there was one question that I had first that I wanted to ask about, because it's a rumor that I have heard, but I don't know if it's true or not. And I think it was maybe episode 8. There was a refrigerator. There was a refrigerator that was found on the planet, and they opened it up, and I think Meow had quite the feast eating the contents of this refrigerator. I heard that that came from somewhere special. Do you know anything about this?
代弁してちょっとだけ答えてみますね。渡辺慎一郎監督が同じ質問を日本でされたことがあるのを聞いたんですけど。
Okay, so I'll try to represent Mr. Watanabe as I try to answer this. I've heard that he was asked a similar question to this in Japan.
一つだけ言うところがあるんですけど、ビバップはサンライズの作品で、ダンディはボンズの作品です。
So let me just say one thing. Cowboy Bebop was made by Sunrise, and Space Dandy is made by Bones. Two completely different studios, not related, no connection.
なのでいろんなことやると怒られることがあるんですね。
So depending on what you do, you can make the other company upset. You don't like to do that.
でも話数の脚本を書かれたのは信本恵子さんなんですね。
But that particular episode's script was written by Keiko Nobumoto, who we know is the writer on Cowboy Bebop as well as Space Dandy.
である日上がってきたコンテンツをチェックした信本恵子さんが渡辺慎一郎さんに電話して「冷蔵庫分かってるわよね」って言って「分かった」って言ったっていう話を聞きました。
And so I heard that when Watanabe was reviewing the storyboards for that particular episode, he received a phone call from Nobumoto that said, "Hey, that refrigerator you see there, you know what I mean, right? You know what that came from, where that came from, right?" And Mr. Watanabe said, "Yes."
というのが答えですね。はい。
So what I'll just add to that is if you didn't get any of the crypticness about this, you need to watch Cowboy Bebop too. Cowboy Bebop as well, not Cowboy Bebop, but Cowboy Bebop as well. I don't know the episode in Cowboy Bebop.
Boys in the Attic. Yeah.
You know the number?
You know the episode number?
Boys in the Attic was the episode name?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's an interesting connection there that ties the works together across many, many years.
And there's also Jonathan's story.
Okay, so we got a few minutes here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Space Dandy really has a lot of Western influences, particularly in the high school musical episode. How did this come to be? And were you afraid that some of the jokes might get lost?
Ah. ミュージカルの17話で結構アメリカン的な参加の話をしてて、それもしかして日本のそういうシーンの場合はしたでしょうか。日本の国とかハイスクールとか So actually, what they're saying is that, you know, maybe not we didn't worry so much because a lot of shows like High School Musical or Glee, a lot of those programs are shown in Japan as well. So I think a lot of people are kind of used to that. All right, let's see. Somebody from that side. Put your hand up there.
Okay, in some of the beta episodes of Space Ending, there's more of an abstract art style. What kind of inspired that shift more from the experimental art style in some later episodes?
Okay. 各話で芸術のスタイルが違いますよね。で特に後半の話なんですけど、ちょっと抽象的な絵が多くなったりしてるんですけど、それなんか意識してそういうふうにしていただいてるんでしょうか。
そうですね、意識してなるべく似たようなのがないようにつけて、そういうアート的な構成になれると、ちょっと。
So what I can say to that is, I don't know if it's particular that all of them are becoming more abstract or unique as we go forward, but we are making a very conscious effort to try to not duplicate the art styles and to change it up and to keep it interesting and to put some very more artsy type of animation in there to appeal to a wider variety of audiences. So it is something that we're very conscious of in the choices. All right. Red scarf. Comes off as somebody really, okay, suave and handsome. Indeed, perhaps. So the question again is, how did you come up with the design concept for the character design concept for Danny? Danny, character design idea. 彼はすごくそういうデザインを考えて生み出した意識してなんか作った場所を自粛してるんですけど、見た目の話なんですけど、
もちろんモデルになった人がいて、渡辺さんの曲は矢沢永吉
言ってた。So they actually had some auditions, if you were, to try to figure out who maybe the right model would be for a Danny character. And there were several people that they had in mind. One of them is a pretty famous person in Japan. His name is Eikichi Yazawa. So if you were to kind of compare it to an American celebrity, if you were, he would probably be compared more to an Elvis style. So, isn't there something that you guys also feel here where the style, the visual appearance of something, maybe it's in trend for a while, but then you let it sleep for a few years, and maybe it kind of comes back into popularity or takes on a new interest? It's kind of a similar type of concept. All right. Well, I think we'll have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. So, who really wants to ask the question? You raised your hand the highest.
We were told there was a lot of staffs pulled together for this. We were on and on about Shampoo, Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star, all these staffs coming together. Do you guys think that one of all these staffs together will produce something this good? Because it's a rage. All my friends watch this. I can't walk down the street without talking to somebody about the show.
So the question is, there were. We've heard that there have been a tremendous number of different staffs brought together to create Space Dandy. Did you have any real vision that this would become as popular of a work as it is? Fair. Space Dandy を作るにあたってさまざまないろんなスタッフが集めて作った祭りになってるんですけど、そういう作品ってこれ絶対ヒットするから最初から思ったりしてたんでしょうか。
狙ってました。絶対出ると思って作ってスケートボード。
So, to be honest, they're a little surprised that it's become as big of a hit as it is, but I know that the vision from the beginning was making this way, it will work. They had their own doubts, but they did what they were told and they made it, and obviously, yes. So, all right, well, before we close, I did want to say just a couple things. We do have an autograph session coming up, and also there is the opening ceremonies tonight. At opening ceremonies, we still haven't picked the 3 episodes that we are going to show, but we are going to show 3 episodes. Hopefully get them up there to talk a little bit about them beforehand, and so hopefully you'll join us for that. And then we do also have additional Space Vanity panels set up for Saturday and Sunday. Saturdays, we are also going to be joined by 2 of the American voice actors, actor and actress. The voice for Dandy and the voice for Honey. So Ian and Alexis will join us. And also, we will be trying to change the pattern a little bit because I'm sure that many of you might come to the panels again and don't want to hear the exact same thing over and over again. So don't be afraid, we're not going to repeat ourselves too much. And we're going to hopefully leave the last session open for anything you want to ask about Dandy. Thank you very much for coming. Let's give them a big round.